ashamed, I've been divorced 2 times over dumb shit. I'm ashamed my son call another nigga pops, cause his mom still bitter, we didn't work it out.
YouTube, what's up? It's been a minute. Hey, all my UTBs. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Let me get stuff out of the way. You know, y'all nosy. Can't have nothing on your desk in the way. People be reading, screenshotting, doing everything they ain't got no business doing. But what's up? How y'all doing today? Talk to me. Hey. So guys, you know, it has been a long time since I've been with you all. You know that I have been all the way behind the scenes working on Auntie Angie's house. We finally had our grand open. We are ready to receive our residents. If you guys are not aware of what's going on over at Auntie Angie's house, in fact, let me post down at the bottom ways you can contribute to Auntie Angie's house, because although we have the house up and going, everybody, you know, we got to keep it going. So we got bills the first of the month. Every month we got bills. There it is right there. You guys can send a Cash App over to support. Help us get through. We need at least 20 people. We need at least 20 people to donate $100 to help us reach our goal for this month. If you don't have $100, that's fine. Send what you got. Y'all also need to be going over to AuntieAngie'sHouse.com, and you guys need to be filling out your monthly subscriptions. So today, listen, we're going to be joined by Judge Joe Brown. I'm assuming that he's going to be hopping on here any minute. Hold on one second. Let me see. Can I pull up something here, though? Let me see if I can pull up something really quickly, because I want to show something to you guys. I think I got to send a link. Everybody share, subscribe. Y'all know what we're getting into today. We're going to be talking about this Trump indictment. From my understanding, President Trump has already left Mar-a-Lago and is already headed to New York. I believe he left at around 12 p.m. He had a long line of support. Guys, to me, all of this is crazy because, for one thing, this is where I'm at. I'm like, we watched them go after this man since 2016. Everything they could imagine, the Russian collusion, the twice impeachments, and I'm just looking for a link here to email something. The 2 impeachments that they had against him, January 6th. Then they had the infamous raid down at Mar-a-Lago. And what I'm saying is, okay, well, if you guys got all that, how is it that you guys are incarcerating this man, charging this man with paying hush money to a prostitute? That's the only thing that they can come up with. Out of every single thing that's going on, that's the only thing that they can come up with is hush money being paid to a prostitute. Give me 1 second. Let me send Judge a text to let him know and remind him that we are now live. Let me get it here. You know, Judge need him a few minutes. Here we go. Okay. We're live. So Judge is going to come on and talk to us about this indictment with President Trump, what's going on. In the meantime, I'm going through my closet and trying to figure out what am I going to wear, because from my understanding, Trump will be having post-arraignment remarks tomorrow, and I will be there. So I'm going to be headed down to Mar-a-Lago myself. I want to hear what Trump has to say. I'm also hearing news and reports that they're putting a gag order on him. So it may not be much to say at all. But at the end of the day, we know what this is about. This is about them not wanting him to run in 2024. With everything that's going on, the American US dollar, whether you guys know it or not, is completely crashing. So while the American US dollar is completely crashing, they are focused on incarcerating President Trump over hush money. And again, there is not, let's be clear, any transaction of any proof of anything being sent from President Trump to Stormy Daniels. Okay. Michael Cohen, therefore, has some, but Michael Cohen, you also ended up going to court. you also ended up getting convicted. Stormy Daniels was also sued and had to pay back all of this money. So you're locking up a former president on charges that he paid hush money to a prostitute. And you know what's so crazy about it? Because now at the same time, they are actively pushing and advocating for laws, okay, that legalize sex work in New York City. The same city that they are prosecuting President Trump. That's out of Kamala Harris's own mouth, if you don't believe me. While we waiting on Judge Joe, guys, here is a message from Judge Joe that you guys should hear. And I'm going to share it here for you guys first. Check this out.
An aunt or an uncle or a monthly contributor, head on over to AuntieAngie'sHouse.com and sign up and become a supporter of your community. Hi, this is Judge Joe Brown, also known as Uncle Joe, and I support Auntie Angie's House. It is a real and effective solution to the Black maternal health care crisis. So you can become an aunt or an uncle or a monthly contributor. Head on over to AuntieAngie'sHouse.com and sign up and become a supporter of your community.
There it is. You heard it here first. Judge Joe Brown said, hey, let me be an uncle. I want to hop in there. I want to help out with what's going on with the babies and the mothers. Let's get behind this pandemic that we're facing, the Black maternal health crisis. We got a Black maternal health crisis while Black mothers dying, giving birth to Black life. What are they focused on? They're focused on indicting a former president over hush money paid to a prostitute. Now, guys, hear me out, right? What happened when Bill Clinton got fellatio in the Oval Office? I'm just asking. Judge says, look for him. We don't see you, Judge. Judge will be coming in a minute. Are you guys, are they serious? Black women in the hospitals right now dying from giving birth. Guys, come on, make sure y'all support Auntie Angie's House in the internet. We've asked you guys to head over to Auntie Angie's House and sign up for $5 monthly subscriptions. But let's get a fundraiser going today. The Cash App is down at the bottom. If you in the comments, we need you to please support. We need you to share. But everybody take $5. There you go. If everybody does this, we can reach our goal. If everybody, and this is something everybody can support, take $5. Go ahead and hit the Cash App. I'm going to call you out. Thank you. Let you know we appreciate you. Let me get in here. Black women dying giving birth to their children. And they are focused on what? Here we go. Indicting a former president. Indicting a former president on hush money paid to a prostitute. I want to know what some of you guys are thinking. When I talked to Judge Joe Brown, Judge Joe told me that what they were doing was absolutely illegal. But not only that, outside of what's going on with this judge, with this President Trump stuff, and we're going to get back to this in a minute. Are you guys paying attention to what's going on in the schools with our children? Are you guys paying? Now, no offense, right, to the transgender community whatsoever, but right after the shooting took place with the manifesto from the trans shooter, as they say, they had Trans Day of Visibility from the White House. Is it just me, or do you all feel the same way that I do, that it's something weird, really, really weird going on? Is it just me? When have we ever seen agendas being pushed so hard down the throats of the American people? When have we ever seen this? Not only is it in movies, it's in the cartoons, it's in the education, it's in the advertisement, it's with the toys, it's with everything. Bud Lights. Did you see Bud Lights celebrating the guy, Devin Vario, what's his name? The transgender. He's doing 30 days of womanhood. I'm not seeing any women be congratulated. I'm not seeing any women be uplifted. I'm not seeing any women being rewarded. And at what point do we ask ourselves, like, okay, true, we don't mind diversity and exclusion, but what part of your inclusion includes my exclusion? That's the question that we as women really need to be asking. We need to be asking ourselves, is the cost of your inclusion my exclusion? Because yes, absolutely, we can make space, right, for, as they have labeled themselves, trans women. And I think that we did. And I think that women have supported that. I think that women are like, okay, girl, do your thing, whatever. I think that we've done that. But it's gone further beyond trans women, because now it's trans women are women. And is that necessarily the truth? Is there an agenda? Is there a global reset? We've been hearing about all of this stuff. They talked about this stuff in the Bible. The collapse of the US dollar is happening right now. And we're going to talk to Judge Joe Brown about that as well. He is in the back studio. Let's play this commercial from Judge Joe Brown one more time, and then we're going to bring him on.
Hi, this is Judge Joe Brown, also known as Uncle Joe, and I support Angie's house. It is a real and effective solution to the Black maternal health care crisis. So you can become an aunt or an uncle or a monthly contributor. Head on over to AuntieAngiesHouse.com and sign up and become a supporter of your community.
Wow, there it is. You heard it from Judge Joe Brown himself. Get on over there to AuntieAngiesHouse.com, guys. It's the first of the month. Contribute your $5 this month, or go ahead and hit the Cash App down at the bottom. We got Judge Joe Brown in the back studio. I'm going to bring him on. Judge Joe Brown does not need any type of introduction. We grew up listening to Judge. We know exactly who Judge is. And one thing we know about Judge Joe Brown, he is going to tell it like it T.I. is. Judge, welcome to the show.
Well, hello, Mrs. King. How are you, my dear?
I am doing wonderful. I love the red drapes in the background. It kind of creates this ambiance.
Fired up.
All right, so listen, President Donald Trump, as we know, is headed to New York and has already arrived in New York to face 30 charges, from my understanding, that he paid hush money to a prostitute. Can you, with all of your legal expertise, and I'm going to give the floor over to you, because one thing about Judge, he talks and we listen. Tell us, what is going on? Is it legal? Is it going to stick? What is this really about, Judge? And I'll just come in if I have.
Okay, let me put it to you this way. Hush money. If somebody's getting blackmailed and they play off the blackmailer, who is the criminal? The blackmailer or the person that paid them off? Blackmail is extortion. That means either directly or indirectly threatening or actually exposing someone to public humiliation, some detriment, and you're demanding that you be paid so you don't do it. That's blackmail. So what do we have here? The victim being prosecuted? I think that's a favorite saying of the left, they're trying to prosecute the victim here. Well, then the next thing we get is an American principle that encourages legal settlements. All right. You're not admitting guilt, but you're settling it and not going to court on it. So you're going to go indict somebody for supposedly complying with the principles of American law. In other words, trying to settle something that he's arguably the victim of extortion behind. All right. Next thing, when you have these settlements, you usually have a court gag order. So you're following the instructions of a court. And when the corporate entity that makes this resolution, it declines to say anything other than for a legal matter, well, if it disclosed what it was for, it would most likely be violating the court order, which says nobody's supposed to say anything about this. Next thing, legal principle. It's been reiterated by the U.S. Supreme Court most recently, and it's consistently with what they've done since the 1870s. They've applied the 15th Amendment to corporate entities. Corporate entities are state-created fictional people. And the person, fictional or otherwise, is the liable person, not those who may be investors. That's why when you invest in a company and the company gets sued or goes bankrupt, they can't sue you. They sue the company because it's a fictional person. So here it is that a fictional person, a person in American law, a full person in American law, with the same rights under the 15th Amendment as any other citizen, fictional or real, acts as a third party to benefit someone, and you're going to hold that someone liable because it is alleged that that person, this other person, did something, and you have to show that the party you're going after actually controlled the outcome of the proceedings, not a board of directors, not a CEO, not corporate activity. So I find that very interesting. One, the principle of settling out of court. Two, keeping the settlement confidential. Three, the forgetting of the 15th Amendment. And four, holding the victim of an extortion / blackmail attempt guilty because they got blackmailed. Now, that's very interesting. And I think they're going to find that in the long run, they made a real mess. You will recall that some years ago when they first started off on Dr. Cosby, I said, this is not going to stand up on appeal. This is a circus, a miscarriage of justice. They've completely thrown the Fifth Amendment out of the window here, the right to be free from self-incrimination. I said that up front. What happened was the district attorney's office, not the individual, the office said, there is no intention to prosecute Mr. Cosby. We have investigated the accusations and the witnesses, and we find them to be without merit and without credibility. At that point, a civil judge said, Mr. Cosby, you must answer these interrogatories because there's no longer any criminal liability. Therefore, the Fifth Amendment does not apply. So he was compelled to answer truthfully to some depositions. Well, he admitted certain acts, but he said even though, yes, he provided some drugs, they were requested, and nobody slipped them to anybody. There were no victims, only willing participants, and that was fine. New district attorney said, we're not going to be bound by that. We're going to go after him. Well, it's not the DA, it's the office. So once the office causes somebody to rely on their representation and be compelled to give evidence against themselves in a civil proceeding. You cannot use that in a criminal proceeding, but they did. And the DA's office clowned, and the judge was an embarrassment to the profession when he lost control of his courtroom proceedings. And it was absolutely ridiculous letting in so-called proof of other crimes from more than a half century before, where somebody didn't say somebody forcibly snatched Nookie. It was, again, I was persuaded. But you have to understand, 50 some years ago when this happened, that was the sexual revolution, and it was all about sex, drugs, rock and roll, baseball, football, basketball, movie star, TV star, singer, and they hadn't even invented rap then, so it was what it was, BBC and the drugs. Now, what was going on is there was a certain attorney, Gloria Allred, and her daughter, and they have a little thing where they encourage women who decided to jumpstart a career, or they decided that they were going to party and come to these early 70s, late 60s, mid 70s parties, see through everything off and enjoy the sexual activity and the BBC and the drugs around the party and come back week after week. Well, later in life, they weren't too happy, and somebody said, "Girl,
what they like at the parties again?" You said what they like at the parties. I just want to make sure everybody.
Well, I mean,
they come to the party half dressed, looking for what?
I mean, you know that cover they had on, what was it, Vanity Fair, or what was the magazine? All these women said they dealt with Cosby. Well, see, I'd seen some of them when I'd go out back to LA where I grew up for vacation. And, you know, we had connections. They used to like to bring all the militants in so that we could add flavor to some parties. So they'd have the party in the Hollywood Mansion or the Bel Air or the Brentwood Mansion, and everybody would come and you'd see them walk in, see-through, topless. Well, not topless, but see-through, no bra, no pockets. And in 15 minutes, the top's off, then the bottom's off, and then you go to the restroom and somebody's giggling. So you wait out there and they come out wiping their mouth and giggle, giggle, giggle. And then you go to get something out of your coat pocket. Everybody put coats on the beds, you know, in an upstairs bedroom. And they're in there laying somebody, and maybe it was a 2-week vacation. You came back to another one, and there they are again. And then you see them years later. Oh, I was a victim. Okay. But that kind of thing, I said back when, this is not going to stand. They got this in violation of the Fifth Amendment. He was induced by an assurance that there would be no prosecution nor liability under the Fifth Amendment. He made the statement, and then somebody came back and, well, the last guy said this, but I don't go with it. No, you're bound by it. So in this case, we've got a thing where, one, the victim of an alleged blackmail / extortion attempt is held to be the criminal because he's supposedly paid off the blackmail. But then again, that was not an acknowledgement of a liability. It was a civil settlement, which happens all the time. Look at the one, George Floyd. That was a settlement. That happens. So it goes on, and it's encouraged in American law. So you know, somebody followed the law.
This is the thing that gets me, Judge. We're looking into a climate that has been created in America where, you know, it's okay to, and I have to bring this up, but to, you know, legally sexualize children, take a child into the hospital, say that they identify as the other gender, remove their body parts. We're hearing stories all the time about, you know, what's going on with our children. And we having an administration that is focused on something that happened between, and I don't know if it happened or not, but let's just say if it did happen, that this would be 2 grown consenting adults. The fact that no one is focused on children, which cannot consent, and focused on something that's going on between grown consenting adults. And not only that, right now in the in the city of New York, per Kamala's own words, they're advocating to legalize sex work.
All right, yeah. Now, here's the thing. Scenario, allegations, they boil down to this. I had sex for money with you. Now, the Vice President of the United States of America is saying that ought to be legal here. And they're talking about it, but I had sex with you for money. And by the way, that's a misdemeanor and it's not committed in anybody's presence, so nobody could be arrested. But it happens because we have the Fourth Amendment, freedom from search and seizure, and the Fifth about being free from self-incrimination, though she incriminated herself, but it's misdemeanor, so nobody's there. And then you turn around and say, okay, you had sex for me, with me, you paid me, and now if you don't give me some more, I'll expose you. That's called blackmail. Allegedly, I'm not saying she did what seems to have been said she did or that she said she did. They'd have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, but it constitutes arguably blackmail. So the victim of the blackmail attempt pays it off, but it's not an admission of wrongdoing. It's simply to get rid of it, because by the time you get through paying attorney fees, you have paid out twice what you would otherwise pay on a settlement. So people say, without conceding liability or fault, we'll settle it. And usually there is a non-disclosure stipulation which goes into effect by order of the impacted court. And then now they want to indict somebody because the corporation didn't disclose what was likely restricted by the court from being disposed. Oh, wow, that's interesting. In other words, I order you to keep your mouth shut. You can keep your mouth shut. And some dipshit DA comes in and we're indicting him because he paid the money off on this settlement and he won't say what for. And by the way, one other thing is, this has nothing to do with support for Trump. This has to do with support for your law. Miranda rights, right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, right to due process. Where these issues come up and they get decided by appellate courts, and a large percentage of the cases where your rights as an ordinary citizen were restated and protected, the person that raised the issue may or may not have been a good guy. Might have been a very bad person, but it's not the person. It's the principle, because the law is supposed to be blind, deaf, cannot speak, and it impartially administers justice. So,
and here's the reality of this. This is a charge, not a conviction. So if
right.
their whole ploy is to just keep him from running 2024, he's already running. How does this impact his race? Does it catapult him forward?
It probably gets him more votes. And I seriously doubt this conviction will stand all the way through the appellate process. And it's beginning to get a large segment of the American population worried about, oh, wow, we whoopee. What are these guys doing? They're getting awful political with this. And by the way, the Bill of Rights was not designed to protect criminals or people accused of crime. It was to prevent the power of the government being used for political purposes to oppress people. It just happens that almost invariably in American law, the power of the government does not come into play until you start oppressing somebody accused of a crime by saying he's a bad guy so we can set the precedent of violating other people's rights. Now, right now, we're beginning to see this kind of thing going on. They were talking about, say, January 6th. which in my perspective was not a large circumstance. I mean, I'm thinking of 18,000 people clowning in D.C. 50 years ago. 1,800 people might have been a small civil upset where they broke windows out, did stuff like that. We're talking about 180, but for weeks on end in the middle of the year before that, 2 years before that, we had all of the people out BLM wise every night, the same 180, 200 out on bond again for the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th time. They're burning down businesses, a large percentage of which were minority owned because they were protesting something, but that was all right. Maxine Waters is actually out there recorded, and you can watch the tapes, YouTube's, if you're one of those types who like YouTube, you can see her saying, we need to, if you see a car with a Trump Pence bumper sticker on the back, break the windows out, key it. If you see a business with a Trump sticker, poster in it, break the windows. We have to take to the streets. Well, guess what? That's direct advocacy, solicitation, and an attempt to incite public disorder. That's illegal. Going around and saying, we need to go do what? Guess what? First Amendment isn't just freedom of speech. It's right to assembly, the right to assemble and petition for redress of grievance shall not be abridged. And the Supreme Court for 230 some years has consistently said that includes protesting and demonstration. And oh, by the way, if you start advocating a position and you don't directly attempt to incite by telling somebody, go out and burn down all of the houses and burn down the businesses, if 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5, or a small portion of the people decide to get unruly, that doesn't mean the speaker that's holding the rally or talking to the rally is guilty of any crime. In America, it is presumed people follow the law.
Judge, what do you think this is? Do you think that this is, leftist, liberal lunatics? That's what I call them. Do you think?
No, I call it destruction of the nuclear family. See, that's what's behind this whole thing. I'm old enough to remember, hell, I graduated from UCLA. I remember class of 69. We heard it over and over. Marriage is a form of slavery. Oh, okay. We had those who say we must destroy marriage. Men are all toxic and masculinity is horrible. And you had a cooperative group. One, they hated that they weren't men. That's the feminists. They hated men. Those were the lesbians. They hated they weren't strong men. Those are what we call beta boys now. They hated that they weren't normal men. That's the gay crowd. And then they had this anti-war thing where they hated that men supposedly caused war. So the thing morphed into, hey, man, we have to do something about this, man. It's about love, man. That war, man. We have to change the way boys are raised to men so they get in touch with their feelings, man, so they don't have that hostility build up and they go to war.
Let me ask you something, Judge. I need you to look at your screen. When you say that this is an agenda, because this is about the destruction of a nuclear family, this is what's happening right now at drag shows and drag readings across this nation. Grown men, half naked, performing sexually and provocatively in front of a room full of children. This is what they are labeling as diversity and inclusion.
That's grooming. You look at the mothers smiling. See, child psychology dictates that children, infants, etc., they emulate the adults they see around them. So they look carefully. They see the parent or the authority figure with a smile or a grin on their face. That means this is approved of. So these youngsters are looking at this mentally ill creature here And they are going, oh, that's okay, that's approved. And children copy. So they're either girls who will say later, oh, it's okay for these boys who can't compete with other boys who want to claim girl status and take away girls' sports. It's okay for them to do that. And then for the boys, okay, this is approved of. I guess what this creature is doing is okay. I can do it too. So you get this grooming.
Now, Judge, we have seen President Trump speak out on the forefront against this issue when it comes to the radical gender ideology that's coming for our children. But Trump is not the only one running for office. You are also running for office. And I want to use some of this time to talk about some of your plans for our children, some of your plans for Memphis, Tennessee, if you are elected into a position, and why is it that your voice isn't being more amplified? And it seems as though that we're seeing you come up under some of the same attacks that other people like Trump or myself came up under when I ran for office. Talk to us.
Yeah, well, see, that's the little punk play, and that's what's wrong with this. You can't confront somebody head up and deal with, face to face. Let's debate this. Let's see where the issues are, the logic, the rationale that's behind your position, how substantial your ideas are when they are debated. No, we have to punk out and start trying to stab somebody in the back and play the punk play. And that's what you get. See, it's not just the far left. It's sissies and punks. And I call them that because they won't say it to your face, but they'll say it when they're safe on the net, or they'll attack you collaterally instead of directly. And you can always tell who the bad guys are because they do that. They won't say it directly to somebody's face. They'll grin in your face and then do it behind the scenes, or they'll get on social media and try to do it, or they'll do it like this. Let's indict him. No, what you are trying to do, see, is tie this whole thing up so the American people won't have a valid opportunity to make a choice as to who their candidates are going to be. You see, it takes months to resolve stuff, so they're counting on this. When is the election coming up? 2024. This is April 2023. So what we're talking about is how many months? We're not even talking about a year and a half now. So we want to tie everybody up for a year and a half. So when he gets to walk, because this is BS, it'll be too late. And this threat, who you don't like because he's hideous the way you portray stuff in the media. And remember, one of the principal points of propaganda these days is tell a lie long enough, loud enough, and you can get anyone, including the liar, to believe that it's true. You tell a lie long enough, and even if the person was an eyewitness to actual events, they will doubt their own recollections and go with what they keep hearing. And we used to deal with that in the criminal justice system because you'd have witnesses contemporaneous to an event and they'd tell stories and they would be recorded and they might even be consistent. But you start hearing a narrative in the newspaper or on television, and 8 months, 9 months, a year and a half later, these same witnesses whose initially recorded observations are consistent and apparently accurate, they recall something totally different a year and a half later that had nothing to do with what they saw. We used to experiment with it. You can say certain keywords and phrases. I know when I used to speak a lot, people would come up, Judge, I really love that point you made. What point? I didn't say anything about that. So we would record the speech and record what the people were saying. And they would have a long thing that they just loved that you said. You hadn't even come close to it, but they thought they heard it because they wanted to hear it. So you have a group that is not objective. They want to hear something negative about Donald Trump or some other people. Everybody's been victim to this kind of mindset, which is not healthy, but they do. So whatever they get prompted into believing happened, that's what went on. He's a bad guy, let's get him. Well, that's not what the American system is about. We have due process because a lot of times people make mistakes, and we don't want lynch mob activity to control the outcome of criminal proceedings, because it's too easy to use those political proceedings for those criminal proceedings for political purposes. In New York, they've got a long history of that. Tammany Hall, which used to run New York back in the 19th century, they had a habit of, when they wanted to win an election and somebody was getting a little too dangerous, they'd have him arrested 2 or 3 days before the election or in the critical part of the campaign season. And they'd try to lock him up incognito or incommunicado so nobody could get to them, and they would be able to control the outcomes. See, that kind of thing we don't want to have happen. The other thing, too, is they're conditioning the American public to an erroneous idea of what American law is. Now, Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution says the president, vice president, if impeached and convicted of bribery, treason, or misdemeanors and felonies in office, may be removed from office. And the 12th Amendment says, if so convicted, they can never run again. So they were so anxious with Trump that they forgot this old adage, be careful what you ask for, you just might get it. What did they do? Well, they impeached Donald Trump when he was president of the United States, but they weren't able to get a conviction. When he was no longer the president of the United States, they went after him, and guess what? They didn't get a conviction either, but what the dumb bozos did is they set up a precedent that says, oh, well, whoopee, you can impeach somebody and convict them purportedly and get them forbidden under the 12th Amendment from holding any other office for stuff that happened at a time they had an office, but you can proceed against them when they no longer had the office. Now, give you an example of how stupid they were and wasted the taxpayers' money. Let's take round one. They said Trump obstructed Congress. That's the easy one. They said he abused his authority. Neither one of those are bribery. So that's out. Treason is the only crime defined in the Supreme Court, in the U.S. Constitution. It isn't even close. Crimes and misdemeanors in office? Well, there's no such crime as abusing and exceeding authority. So that's out. How about the one obstructing the will of Congress? Well, aside from the point that any time a president vetoes an act that Congress has passed, and remember, Congress consists of the House and the Senate. So when this one went over, that's obstruction, I guess, but in this case, it went to the Senate, and these dumb bozos in Congress thought in the House of Representatives, one of the chambers of Congress under the first Article 1 of the Constitution, where it says Congress of the United States shall consist of 2 houses, the 2 chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. So when it sent it over, they thought of themselves as congressmen because that's how they're described in the newspapers. So maybe their will got obstructed, but the Republicans in the Senate, which they controlled at the time, they simply said, hey, anybody in here feel like they got obstructed? The majority said no. Well, that's out of there. So if you don't obstruct both houses, you can't do that. But it wasn't any offense anyway. So it was dead on arrival, but they were dumb enough to go that way. And they got a lot of the public all ramped up thinking that was officially wrong. It's not. Now, let's look at the recent furor with Mar-a-Lago. Trump is supposed to have had secret documents at Malargo. Open to lack of security. Well, the same Secret Service that was guarding him in the White House was guarding him at Malargo. These same documents were prepared for his examination and his guidance as two things: Chief Executive Officer of the United States of America, that's not really the one, but as Chief Diplomat under the Constitution and as Commander-in-Chief of the military. What does that mean? Well, the case is United States Department of Navy, 1988 versus Egan, E-A-G-N, E-A-G-A-N, excuse me. And it had multiple concurring opinions, and some of them say the President of the United States can and may declassify any document he chooses or classify any by any means, manner, or fashion he chooses, including, I guess, removing them from the White House, which he is alleged to have done when he was the president. But the president has that authority under the Constitution. Okay. Now, is he going to go tell foreign agents? Well, once he read it, if you were a smart man, you don't forget what you read. You don't need to document. Okay. Now, what about what's happened with the documents found in Biden's garage? Well, Biden was vice president of the United States when these documents were removed, and he didn't have the authority to declassify them. So again, be careful what you ask for. You go in and now you're trying to hide these things so we don't get a chance to know. So why is he in possession of still classified documents when they're in his possession, but they came into his possession when he was vice president, when he did not have the authority to declassify? Okay, now, next thing, I was the judge for this moot court thing that Fox had about Hunter Biden's, not one, not two, but 3 laptops that suffered liquid damage. And we brought in and got testimony from the repairman. And there's some very interesting things on there. And it looks like there's a good chance that those documents were left there. So certain individuals who visited that place, who are the subject of what's in those laptop email transmissions, could come by and visit. And then we note that the Secret Service this time is refusing to release the list of visitors. And in fact, now they claim they don't even have any. Ooh, wow, we whooping. Now, what were we looking at? Whether there was a FARA violation, F-A-R-A, Foreign Agents Registration Act violation. And the jury, which had 2 black men, young, 2 black women, 2 white women, they found probable cause to believe that a further investigation should be done of criminal activity. It was a pretty decent jury. The prosecutor in this had been an assistant DA in Manhattan for 15 or 19 years, I forget which, before he had spent a decade or 2 as a defense lawyer. And the defense lawyer in here had been a Manhattan prosecutor as well before being a defense lawyer. They're very skilled, knowledgeable, and competent counsel. We looked at each other and said, oh, wow, this is deep. And as a matter of fact, another thing, I think the 3 of us did the country a favor. We talked Fox out of putting some of the stuff out there. Said, you don't need to touch that. That is a hazard to American security, and some American personnel, somebody might snatch as a result and throw on a wall and shoot. So question we had is, how did he get this stuff? And it's clear the back and forth that he's having on there, his only job that he was getting, as he said in his email exchanges with Dad, the big guy, $86,000 a month for providing access to his dad, the vice president at the time. So they had a lot of discussions and a lot of other things, and I'll just leave it at that. But it might be interesting if you just laid the puzzle pieces down on the table and put them together. But be careful what you ask for again. You might get it. So it's such rank hypocrisy that I am astonished. It used to be that the Republican Party was the one that played fast and loose with rights when they were off into this far right thing where they were talking about morality and supporting commies and before that Nazis. Now we have folk who traditionally defended the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. They're the ones that are trying to snatch the rights of ordinary citizens because they have an agenda. They want to destroy the traditional nuclear family. And by the way, there's this organization, BLM. And I told you to look years ago. You looked before they took it down and published on their site that some of us, like you, me, and other people, were looking at them and pointing it out. What did it say? First point, after the frou-frou, we are for the destruction of the traditional nuclear family. And that's what you have, destruction of the traditional nuclear family. And Donald Trump is perceived as getting in the way. Donald Trump is perceived as being anti that, well, whatever it is down there trying to masquerade as a woman. Let me say something. Let me say one thing about that.
Okay.
If you look at lions, you see the male lion, he's got a mane and the female doesn't. Gorillas, the male's 850-pound silverback male gorilla. The ladies are 150, 200 pounds. All right. Chimps, the males are a lot bigger than the females. The birds are differently. They have different color schemes, different whatever, this, that, and the other feather combinations. And human males and females do not look the same, all right, when they're bare. But humans, guess what? We don't usually walk around naked outside of a sunny beach or a resort or the bedroom. So we have a cultural tradition of what we wear matches what's underneath. So when the bird sees a female, male bird, he goes, oh, wow. When the female bird sees a male bird, she goes, ooh, woo-wee. And the same thing up along the line. So now you've got people with this popularized, so you don't know what you're looking at. Like a friend of mine said when he was visiting your city, he said, Joe, I was down there at Atlanta airport, man, in the lounge, and I thought I was looking at the finest woman I'd ever seen. And I got up enough nerve to go speak, and it turned out to be a boy. So obviously something's going wrong with this human mating scheme here in the United States in certain places where the boys can't tell the girls and the girls can't tell the boys. Now, I said that, but, you know, everybody's got their right to do what they want to do in their bedroom.
And that's true. And let me ask you a question. When we see and about the Black Lives Matter thing, we did call it out on their website. And I remember reading it verbatim and playing it on my YouTube. And they actually blocked my YouTube page and suspended my YouTube page. It's almost like a complete takeover. It's almost like, and I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but when we hear these people talking about some type of global reset, it seems like it's introducing a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of life. And it seems to go against what the majority of us stand for. So when you are someone like Trump, like yourself, like me, that's saying, hey, we're not against you, but we are against this hostile takeover of our children. What do you need from us in the community, Judge? How can we get behind you and support your run for office more? Because at the end of the day, once we get through fighting over politics, we got to understand that we need people in office that not only represent us, but stand for truth.
Okay, 2 words. Hell no. Not just say no, but hell no. See, this is a unique opportunity in America. We've had white, black, brown, red, yellow against each other, whites against whites, and all of the rest of it. Native American red against red in the early parts, tribes fought each other. Sometimes they allied with each other. We've got a common cause right now. We are all humans, and the human breeding scheme is based on the family. So when somebody's trying to attack the most fundamental aspect of being human, that is the family, then they're everybody's enemy. And that's something we can all come together on. Now, I'm not talking about being anti-gay. A lot of gays, by the way, think LGBTQ is a poisonous cult, as one of them expressed it to me. Just because you're Islamic doesn't mean you support Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Or just because you're a Christian didn't mean that you had to support Reverend Jim Jones and drinking large amounts of Kool-Aid at large outdoor picnics in Guyana. See, a lot of folk don't like the fact that they have embraced this grooming of children so some sick pedophiles can exploit your child and turn them into sexual objects. See, that's not healthy. It would not be healthy for even heterosexuals to start pushing sexuality on children who haven't even gotten deep into being into childhood, let alone trying to push them into sexuality of any kind. See, that's not good. It's not good for human nature. But there's another side. When I was in my 20s, we had 180 million people in the United States. Now we may have 360 million plus. That's doubled. The population of the planet Earth is getting rather large for the planet, and what we will do and cooperate in getting done. Maybe what they're trying to do is destroy the family to cut back on human breeding. But then again, that's not well studied. They're trying to put a draconian program into effect without any observation of how it works out. So it's dangerous. And we are at a position in our history where we need to cooperate. See, we've had a technological advantage over everybody else, a geographic advantage when we've got an ocean north, east, and west of the continent. Right now, that's evaporating. So, what are they doing? They're trying to de emphasize those characteristics of the country that got it where it was. Now, yes, we've had problems between black and white, but when we didn't have this other problem based on destruction of the family, even in black neighborhoods, it may have been ghettos, but they had strong families. It's not so
That's
much.
true. Now, Judge, questions are coming in from the audience. LS is asking, what are your comments on Michael Cohen taking out a home equity loan to pay Stormy Daniels? Now we know Trump has money, has had money prior to him running for office.
Okay. Now, time out. That's a red herring. Did you hear what I said about American law has a fundamental policy when it comes to civil law? It encourages civil settlements rather than civil trials. So at all costs, you are encouraged to settle matters so they don't go to trial. As a process of the settlement, they are often kept confidential. In other words, nobody admits liability. Nobody says anybody did wrong. Nobody said anybody did right. That's a fundamental aspect of American law. So what you have here is most people borrow money when they're trying to pay off a lump sum settlement. Most people ask relatives, co-workers, businesses that they're affiliated. That's the way it works. That's normalcy. So now we're worried about whether somebody mortgaged a home to pay off Stormy Daniels. Doesn't make any difference. Plus, under the factual circumstances alleged in this particular instance, it simply supports a contention from the other side that Trump didn't know anything about it. Others were acting in his behalf, which there's nothing wrong with that either. So in American law, to commit a crime, you have to have criminal intent. In other words, if I just walked in the door with some people, I wasn't with them, and you weren't, that doesn't mean you're responsible for their criminal enterprise. So that still doesn't incriminate Trump. That's just a red herring to bamboozle the public to think something's wrong. Read the Constitution. The average high school graduate can read the whole damn thing in 15 minutes.
Another question, Judge. Venus Montgomery says, please ask the judge to reiterate the purpose of the Second Amendment.
The Second Amendment is this. First, when the Constitution was ratified in 1789, and then the Bill of Rights was ratified in 1791, they had a thing called the Federalist Papers. They were pamphlets put out detailing reasons why the Bill of Rights, for example, was a good thing and why the states should ratify this Bill of Rights. Well, when they ratified that Bill of Rights, guess what? Police had not been invented. That would not occur until sometime later in the late 1830s in England, and it was known as Scotland Yard. And Sir Robert Peel was charged by the Crown in the Parliament with formulating a department of individuals who would enforce the law. And to this day, Robert Bobby Peel in England, the cops are called Bobbies because they were named after him. So the police didn't get to America until the 1840s when they came to Boston and New York on the East Coast. Before that, we had two mechanisms to enforce the law and public order. One, the sheriff, and that goes all the way back to Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham. Two, the militia, which goes back another 1,000 years to Great Britain, when they had militias. And what is a militia? A militia is all the able-bodied men in a district between 15 and 60. So they were expected to arm themselves, become proficient in use of weaponry, whatever was contemporaneous. And that militia, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the common defense, well, that militia was supposed to impose public peace, dignity, and order in a district or an area. And in England, for many a century, if you had a duty, you had a commensurate right. In other words, if you had a duty to practice at the target several times a week with a longbow at 100 yards, then you had a right to possess a longbow because you had a right to possess that which was necessary to fulfill your duties. So when things got out of line, remember, a standing army was discouraged. So you wanted the ability of the people to protect themselves. Remember also, when these rules got put in place, there was this little dispute between the newly arriving white settlers who brought in some African slaves to do manual labor and other onerous things, and the Native Americans who didn't exactly want to give up their territory to these invaders. So you had a lot of very dangerous clashes, and some scalps got taken and nailed to lodge poles. So there was this problem. And nowadays, the Second Amendment also has another perceived reason, which was talked about at great length in the Federalist Papers 230 some years ago, which was, If the people are as well armed as any military that's likely to come from them, then you're not likely to have a tyranny, because you're not likely to have any government that is so powerful compared to the ordinary citizens as to be able to impose an authoritarian, totalitarian, repressive government on them. So the Second Amendment is not only to allow neighborhoods, communities, and districts to defend themselves from threat to their public peace, dignity, and order. It's to allow the citizens themselves to defend against an oppressive government by being equally powerful. See, we like to talk, or used to like to talk, about checks and balances. You had the feds and you had the states. That's a check and balance. You had the legislative function, the executive function, and the judicial function. They each were equally powerful and they offset each other. So no one branch would be overly powerful. And against all of the governments, you had the people. So to ensure the people that were not ever rendered powerless, they had a right to keep and bear arms, which is one of the most important things. Now, yeah, people die, but about 2 times as many people die from claw hammers as they do from guns every year. More than that die by use of kitchen utensils than by guns, and many, 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 many more times die in automobile accidents, and many, 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 many more times die, many, many more die from palpable medical malpractice. Now, let's take cars. We depend upon automotive transportation to move our goods, our raw material, our fuel to a great extent, our persons to go back and forth, jobs to bring in raw materials and fuel so we can make the things we need to keep a large population going. So guess how many people get killed by automotive accidents? A whole lot. I would hazard to say that every human listening to this knows at least one somebody who got done in by an automobile accident or hurt. And everybody listening just about has been in one. But you see, we don't give them up because they're so useful. So we accept the collateral damage. Now, yes, maybe some damn fool who lacks man training, who doesn't understand it's a man's duty, honor, obligation, responsibility. He's accountable for doing his part to make where he lives a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, morality, sense of purpose, etc., etc. And he's a man of peace who can be brave and courageous when necessary. Okay, fine. That aside, what we see become acceptable items of collateral damage to something much more fundamental. We don't want what happened under the National Socialist Workers Party to become the rule here in America. What's the National Socialist Workers Party? Well, the German acronym, everybody knows. It's called NAZI. So do we want to go there? Or most recently, we were talking about better dead than red. And now, hopefully, we aren't talking about being dead rather than in the Republican Party or independent, but they were talking about communist. So do we want to go there where all of the instruments of public peace, dignity, and order are possessed by a government who would need to be very totalitarian to enforce public peace, dignity, and order? Or do we leave it to the citizens to an extent, protect themselves? And by the way, there's nobody else to rely upon, because guess what? Over 230 years, every single case that has raised the issue as far as the U.S. Supreme Court says, guess what? The police have no duty to protect you except when you're in their custody. If they stumble onto or they are summoned to a breach of public peace, dignity, and order, then guess what? If they catch somebody in the process of breaking public peace, dignity, and order, endangering a citizen, and as part of their duty to apprehend, then yeah, they can protect somebody, but they have no duty to protect. So if the government the police have no duty to protect, who's supposed to protect you? So here you have people talking about defund the police and disarm the citizens. Oh, and make the law more draconian. Well, if you're going to murder somebody and you're liable to the death penalty for murdering somebody, do you care that they had a little extra something on there? He used a firearm? No, they don't. And I'll tell you, from having dealt with murderers, thieves, wrongdoing people for half a century as a prosecutor, defender, and judge, that ain't how it works. So what are you doing to yourself? What kind of dream world are you existing in? Other thing too, I have a right. Yeah, you have a right, but can you ensure that you get it? Well, somebody will do it for me. They'll think of my feelings. Nobody gives a damn about your feelings. And the planet is a dangerous place. Let's see if I can think about it. You can get done in by lightning strike. Hell, I almost got hit by a bolt of lightning one time myself. Okay, you can get hit by hail and killed. You can get done in by a tornado. Some people just got through getting done in a few days ago. All right, hurricane. A lot of people done in by a hurricane. Typhoon. Oh, yes, all the time. Tsunami, tidal wave, earthquake, volcanic activity, meteorite strike, snowstorm, ice storm, flood, you name it. It's a dangerous place. You can be out enjoying your vacation and a shark take your leg off or take you out. All kinds of things can happen to you. You can get killed by a lion, a tiger, a panther. California's gotten 15 or 16 people died over the last couple of decades because mountain lions did them in. That's in Los Angeles, California. Okay. Rabid dogs. All sorts of things can take you out. So being alive on this planet is not an entitlement to being safe. And when you talk about collateral damage, if you want to get the essence of it, take the number of people who got negatively impacted and divide them by 360 million, and you see how many zeros you get on the other side of the decimal point. So being free is not safe. Getting your stuff together requires application, and you cannot make anyone less safe or more safe by making them less safe. And you want to see the end result? Why do you think the U.S. has a Department of Defense? Why do you think we had a Cold War with the Soviet Union for 45 years? Why do you think we're worried about the Chinese with the People's Republic of China, North Korea, all sorts of things? We've got hostilities in Ukraine and all of the rest of it. And by the way, are we in Ukraine to defend international liberty and justice, or are we there because somebody got indicted and the indictment was revealed in November 2020 for multiple counts of felonies, including bribery, extortion, solicitation of treason and perjury, etc. And by the way, Article 6 of the Constitution says there are three things that are part of the supreme law of the land. One of them is treaties ratified by the Senate. And there's a 1999 treaty ratified by the Senate that President Bill Clinton negotiated. And guess what it says? The United States and Ukraine agreed to mutually apprehend, assist in the detection, prosecution, and, this is interesting, extradition of criminal elements wanted by the other signatory to the treaty. So we have a duty to extradite President Joe Biden to the Ukraine for prosecution on a long organized crime indictment. So, but conveniently, he's president of the United States, so we declare diplomatic immunity, but is what's going on in the Ukraine an effort to get him dismissed along with his son of the many counts of organized criminal activity in Ukraine. So where do we go with that? See, all kinds of things. Think before you go off on a deep end. Oh, well, he's evil, blah, 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 blah. And by the way, interestingly enough, January 6th, they hate this one. There is the Confidence in Elections Act of 1877. It says when the American public becomes lacking in confidence of their electoral processes, Congress, that means the House and Senate, shall jointly appoint a 15-man committee, 5 from the House, 5 from the Senate, 5 from the U.S. Supreme Court. They are charged with taking at least 10 days to do an independent audit of the election results and reporting back to Congress what's going on, or if they can't reach a conclusion in 10 days, to take as much time basically as is necessary to conduct an adequate and satisfying audit. So when January 6th occurred, that was the next item on the agenda. So that act is still good law in the United States. It's called the Confidence in Elections Act of 1877. So did the news media tell anybody about this? No, they didn't.
They absolutely didn't, Judge. And I say like my grandmother said, and it all makes sense. You cannot bring a gun. I mean, you can't bring a knife to a gunfight. And I mean, we see all of this going back and forth. And I'm like, hey, if somebody got a gun pointed at me, I'm not going to be able to fight my way out of it with my bare fist or with a knife. And it's like, none of the bad guys are going to give their guns up. So we're going to find ourselves in a position where we are absolutely defenseless. Now, Judge, I know your time is valuable. You recently jumped and put your support behind Auntie Angie's house, which I want to play a couple of videos here, a couple of testimonials, because I want people to see exactly what it is that we're supporting. After we play these couple of videos, Judge, I'd love for you to talk about the importance of us bringing solutions to the Black maternal health crisis. You're going to be at the Black Agenda Movement, April 22nd and 23rd, to talk about solutions in our community right here in Atlanta. And then I also want you to tell the people how they can support your campaign, Judge. You seem to be like me a lot. We talk about all our issues, but we don't remind people how to support us and give them those calls to action. So everybody.
Oh, no. And same thing you're doing here. What I'm bringing to the table in Memphis is solutions. I have some solutions that I've been working on for a half century. I've refined them. I've had an opportunity to put them into play, and I've seen how effective they have been in the real world. You saw me for 15 years. I was in your living room or your den or your bedroom, and you got to see how I operated, just like you're doing with Auntie Angie's house. I'm trying to make this the people's house in Memphis.
Now, stop, hold it right there, Judge, because I want you to tell us more about the people's house. Guys, let's listen to a couple of these testimonies, and then we're going to
I want to hear this. Judge. Let's do something positive here.
I'm Waquita, and I really appreciate the time and the effort that Auntie and the organization have gave me into leading into my life with my daughter. I really appreciate the time and the effort that they have put in with their organization and their support. I am living good and better now.
Angie, you saved Savannah's life. You and Auntie Angie's house, the love and the support was overwhelming for me and the baby. Um, had it not been for you being such an advocate for unborn lives, me and the baby would have been gone. I was like, oh, I could kill two birds with one stone. So thank you for just allowing God to use you. And when I'm able to, I will be a big part of Auntie Angie's house too, and just paying it forward.
My Auntie Angie helped me with both of my last pregnancies with both of my boys, and I thank her so much. With my last son, it was really tough because I was 8 months pregnant. I did have a job. I was in between jobs. Nobody wanted to hire me because my stomach was so big. And I contacted my Auntie Angie, and she got right on it. I asked her, can she please help me or get me some help? And she did. I was able to catch up on my bills. Even after I had my baby, she was helping me. She provided me with a car seat. Whatever I needed, she was there. Whenever I needed her, she was there. And I thank her so much for that. And whenever she need me, I'll be there.
Honestly, I'm so thankful that I chose life. Being a mother is an indescribable feeling, and I feel like you feel a lot better giving birth to your child than choosing death for something that you created. I'm so thankful that I was able to come into contact with Auntie Angie. It has been nonstop support from the foundation and her from the very beginning, and so I'm so thankful for people like her within the community.
Quick shout out to Angie's house. Thank you, Angie, for everything. Late night talks, daily encouraging words, daily motivational words. Just keeping me motivated to not go the abortion route with my daughter. She was born October 6, 2020. Alasia's doing great. Alasia's healthy. Alasia's well. Alasia is working an iPad, iPhone better than any adult or child that I do know for her age. She's amazing. So thank you, Angie, for everything. And congrats again with Angie's house.
Guys, those are some of the testimonies from Auntie Angie's house, which we are now open. That's a picture of the home. And the community has really gotten behind Auntie Angie's house. Just for some of you guys that did not see, the Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robertson of North Carolina, came down. He showed up. Benjamin Watson from the NFL, New York Patriots, was there. Bruce Lavelle, Bishop Dwayne Harden, Alveda King. These are some pictures from some of our babies and also the people that have helped us. I just want to say, Judge, that I thank you for putting your support behind this initiative. And I thank the people that are watching right now that are sending in Cash App donations. Guys, we want you all to see what it is that you are supporting. And Judge, this is what this is about, the Black Agenda Movement, providing solutions. You're going to be here the 22nd and 23rd of April to talk about solutions. We always talk about the problem, but now we're coming with solutions. So guys, you need to head over to the blackagendamovement.com. Make sure you get your tickets to be there. Judge, I'm going to give you the last 5 minutes of the show. Talk to us about your campaign and talk to us about your run for mayor up there in Memphis, Tennessee.
Some points today, but one of the reasons that I did so is to give people a background of what faces them and why they need to be very vigilant about their circumstances. Now, in Memphis, we have a place that ought to be a mecca for a lot of people. 60% of the judges are Black and female, criminal court judges. 65% of the prospective jurors are Black. 65% of the police department is Black. 75% of command authority is Black. We have situation, last I checked, only 19.1% of the registered voters in Memphis are white. So it ought to be a place that is subject to Black control so we can show what we can do. But unfortunately, those people that we have had elected to represent us do not. They have another status. They're surrogates for people who are not interested in us. The children who are out in the streets committing lawless acts, they look at their erstwhile leadership who are committing the same lawless acts. They're stealing left and right. The money that ought to go to the citizenry is more and more efficiently siphoned off for other purposes besides the good of the people. We can't even get potholes fixed. So we have to fix the streets, the potholes, and the people. Somebody has to be leadership to get down up close and personal, eyeball to eyeball, and start spreading the message to the youth about what they need to be proper men. I think what I'd have to teach them is a good thing. Their obligation, protecting womanhood and promoting manhood, not living off of womanhood, not subduing womanhood, not exploiting womanhood, not pimping womanhood, not poisoning womanhood, but promoting it and also protecting it as well as protecting childhood. If you're a man, it's all about how you provide for those you owe an obligation to, not how many you have. And we need to put that back out there. We've got an opportunity to take charge of the police department, not with civilian oversight, but with civilian control and command, just like you have with the Pentagon, where you have a Secretary of Defense, Army, Navy, etc., subsecretaries, and we need that with the police department. So we need civilian heads of sex crimes, burglary, traffic, uniform patrol, juvenile, you name it. We need some programs with the juveniles, and we've got a new juvenile court judge here who used to be the public defender in my court for 10 years. He's a sharp guy. He's had his in and outs with them over the years, so he has perspective. Now, next thing we need is public peace, dignity, and order promoted. You talked about the militia. We can use the Second Amendment to organize a community militia of sorts, not crank, right-wing, incel, Proud Boy nonsense, but we can take retired first responders, veterans, good citizens, organize them, train them in the law, use of force, put them out so they can bring adulthood back to the hood, manhood back to the hood, womanhood back to the hood, supplement the police patrols. And hey, don't I know you, son? Come here. What you doing out here right now? Earl, don't you know this boy's mama? Yeah, she lives 2 streets over. Boy, we're going to ask you. Yes, you are. And see, we have a synergy between the police and the citizens. Next thing, let's say this. We have courts, so they cut down on the friction amongst people. But courts are priced out of everybody's reach. So the city needs to come up with binding arbitration, which is what it is under federal law and local law. And we need to have community arbitration tribunals where lawyers aren't permitted to practice so that the citizens can afford to resolve disputes with each other so they don't pop caps on each other. We need to take advantage of this Mississippi River that flows 24/7 and set up hydroelectric power units, which are modular. You don't require concrete emplacements. And we can generate enough electricity to put it into the net and sell it from New Orleans to Louisville to Chicago to St. Louis to Little Rock to Jackson.
Uncle Joe, save some of that. Save some of those solutions because I want you to give some away at the Black Agenda Movement. Y'all want to hear the rest of these solutions Judge got? Y'all need to come out, see Judge Joe in person here in Atlanta in the Black Agenda Movement. Judge, and then you also need to go over to Judge Joe's website. Judge, what's your website for your campaign run?
Okay, we have a website. We just set it up, but we were working on getting some of the bugs out today. JudgeJoeBrown.com. 2023. But you don't need to remember Judge Joe Brown. Well, hell, you've been with me for years and years. You ought to. JJB 2023.com. Go there and you can even contribute various ways, because we don't want money from these large corporate interests. We want it from ordinary people. Next thing, that's service. And I have to put this in because I also do sauce as well as deliver service.
Uh-oh, the barbecue sauce.
Yes. And we have been stomping. We've been winning all these blind taste tests, and they're into grocery stores and markets. A main #1 market next month is going to start having our products on their shelves, and we've got a few thousand cases already ordered by such and such. We will be on the electric trucks, and okay, if you're on the West Coast, it's on the shelves. And by the way, say this, we've got an affiliation with a bourbon product.
Uh-oh.
Where, guess this, it's the only distillery in America operated by a sister.
Wow.
And it's named after daddy and granddaddy. They were moonshiners down in Mississippi. It's called Poppy's, P-A-P-I apostrophe S. And Tiffany Haddish has been doing some commercials. She's an investor too, so she's part of this play. We've got some very interesting ads and some kickoffs that the grocery chains want us to do for them. So you'll be seeing that. Quite entertaining, if I do say so.
JJB, moderators, put that in the chat. JJB 2023. That's how you can go support Judge Joe Brown in his run for office. If you are in Memphis, you guys need to email his campaign so we can get boots on the ground. This is a grassroots effort. Judge, a lot of people.
And wait a minute, one give you the barbecue.
Yes,
barbecue sauce.
Give us the barbecue.
JJB BBQ.com. So it's JJB2023.com and JJBBBQ.com.
Right. So listen, Judge, people are in the comments are saying, can you come on the show more often? They like you better over here. They says Dana doesn't let you talk. I don't know who Dana is. They're just going off. But they're like, Judge, can you please come over to this channel more often?
Actually,
answer that.
Actually, she and I interviewed you a couple of years ago. Dana, let me give context. Dana is a multiple grandmother. She is older than she looks. She holds up well. So she's been around. She and I are very good friends, like you and I are, and your husband. So we talk all the time. Well, she and I do too. So what we are trying to do with what we show is this happens sometimes in families or between men and women, but you can still keep working together even if you fuss. It's not about trying to destroy somebody or ruin somebody. It is as it is. And Dana's okay. I also do something on Friday. She's the producer and director. It's Valerie Denise Jones. It's the Judge Joe Brown show. It's call in for the most part. And you can catch it syndicated on iHeart and some other stuff during the week. We go international. They get it in Europe and in the English Commonwealth. That's the Judge Joe Brown show Friday. And I'll give you a number, 929-477-1167. And that will be 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And if you're on and you click in, we have, as Valerie calls it, Hunger Games between 6 and 7 when all lines are open and everybody can do their thing. So that's The Real Dana on Thursday. And also we do have, and we will have tonight, a Twitter space. I think it is 9 Eastern Standard Time. So every Monday or Tuesday, there's a Twitter space she hosts where, you need your cell phone.
They want you to give them the number one more time. Somebody said they didn't get it.
Area code 929-477-1167. Now, if you want to speak, hit 1, and usually there's a big key, and you can speak when you get recognized, or you can just stay there and listen, or you can wait till it hits syndication. 929.
Give it a number again, Judge.
929-477-1167.
929. The last 4 digits are 1167. Everybody, welcome Judge Joe Brown to the show. And thank you, Judge, for giving us your time. You've been on with us for an hour and a half, and we are so grateful. Everybody, don't forget to head over to the blackagendamovement.com. Judge Joe Brown is going to be right here in Atlanta, Georgia, April 22nd and 23rd. Talk to us.
I have one more thing. I told you about this when our football playing young friend was there. You were there at the restaurant the other day. There is a program that has been in effect for at least 80 years. It started off at Tuskegee Institute. The original Tuskegee Airmen, the fighter pilots, went through it. It's still in existence. The Tuskegee Airmen's Association that Mrs. Brown, you met her, no relation, operates, and we have a problem. There are 20 positions every 10 months. It's a 9-month program. You have to be 18 to 21. When you get through the program, you will receive a commercial airline pilot's license that includes instrument flying and multiple engines. You can be employed, just think, in your lower early 20s at 6 figures. And I've got a former in-law, brother-in-law, he makes 7, sometimes 8 figures a year doing this. And you know what the problem is? Even though there are 20 slots open, last class, we only had 3 applicants for the 20 slots. And the Smithsonian is threatening to cut the funding if something isn't done about this. So it's been live and very effective over the last several decades. And you met Mrs. Dolores Brown, a retired banker. Her husband, who was the fighter pilot, now deceased, she's a widow. He was CEO for Kaiser Permanente in California. He had 16 hospitals under him. And what he did was interesting. He joined the Tuskegee Airmen, went through this same program when he was 17. He had not gone to college. He wound up being a major in the U.S. Army Air Corps. He wound up going to college as a result of this and went on to become CEO for Kaiser Permanente in California, over 16 hospitals, and died a wealthy man. I met him and his wife about 30 some years ago, and man, those are some dynamite brothers. And some of us today, young folk today, might want to emulate that and learn what they learned about manhood, duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, and accountability, and really putting it on the line and talking about a rite to passage, 400 miles an hour, 70 below zero, 35,000 feet, 4 hours from home, and you have Messerschmitt shooting at you with 30 millimeter cannon. And by the way, I met the one that shot down 2 German jets. Dr. Roscoe Brown, no relation to Mrs. Brown here, and he was a professor emeritus at the New York University. We need some more of this kind. Now, behind every strong man is a strong woman. That's what she did. They cooperated. That was a beautiful synergy, and it's too seldom that we see that. We need to learn that again. The other point is we don't just take men, we take everybody, white, black, brown, red, yellow. But as I said, you're looking at 6 figures a year to start. That's over 100,000 a year. 20 positions every 10 months. We didn't even have but 3 applicants for the 20 positions. That was 17 unfilled positions. So come on, get on it. That's what you need. Man up, woman up. Take care of your business. You talk a good game, make it a good game, make it real.
And,
So I had to say that for them because that's a solution
that
we
is
all need
the
to
solution.
bring.
I'm glad that you brought that up. And it's also an opportunity for our children. Some of our kids don't want to get out of high school and go to college. And I mean, with all of these school shootings that are taking place, a lot of parents are looking into other options as well. And we do need more Black pilots. I think that this is very
Now, not just Black pilots, air traffic controllers, aircraft mechanics. They also have other scholarships aside from these flight ones. And by the way, you don't need perfect vision. They just need to be correctable to 2040. And I'll tell you something else. I mentioned it to you. A lot of the airlines are looking for maturity, so they will take you up to 64 years old, even if you have no flight experience at all, train you and make you a pilot on a commercial airline. So there are a lot of things available in this industry, and you don't get laid off, by the way.
Listen, and this is the information that our community needs to hear. Guys, let's remember these things. JJB2023.com, JJBBBQ.com. Go over there and order that barbecue sauce. Let me thank the people that donated today. You guys know today's show is dedicated to Auntie Angie's house. Thank you so much for everybody that tuned in. We're hoping that each and every one of you will donate to the Cash App to support Auntie Angie's house, which is another solution that we are providing to the Black maternal health crisis. Desiree Jackson, Jeffrey Speller, Deborah Casey, Shatoya Walker, Stephanie Pickett, Kendall, Jesse Stevens, Leroy Stanley, my boy Darth Low RQ, Tamika Miller, Kim Smith, What is the art, God? Courtney, Jamisha Harrison. Thank you guys so much. Those of you that thought of us, and for those of you that are going to send a donation over to this house, you guys know we're in place, but now we got to keep the house going. We got the house, we got it furnished, we got everything that we need, but guess what? We got to pay the rent. Mortgage got to be paid every single month. Bills, water, light, gas. We got to provide resources for the babies. So guys, if you did not Cash App today, head on over to AuntieAngieHouse.com, sign up. A lot of good information from the judge today. Judge, we are going to see you April 22nd, 23rd. Enjoy the rest of your day, Judge. Thank you for joining us.
And thanks for the help with the mayor's campaign. Mrs. King, have a good day. And by the way, tomorrow is an unfortunate day. It's the anniversary of one of your husband's relatives getting slain here in Memphis. We're going to do something about that too. All right?
Let's do it, Judge. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
All right.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in to the show today. Not only is tomorrow going to be the anniversary of the assassination of Alveda King's uncle, Martin Luther King Jr., but it will also be the first time that a sitting president has ever been arrested by the New York Attorney General's office. Tomorrow, a very, very sad day for President Donald Trump, as he has to face some trumped up charges. And I'll just say, at the end of the day, the way I feel about it is, out of everything they said they could have got him on, all of this stuff about, selling nuclear codes to other countries, Russian collusion, January 6th, the documents being found at Mar-a-Lago, everything they said they could have got him on. This is about a prostitute. And in the meantime, they are trying to legalize sex work. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Let's keep Trump uplifted. I will be posting tomorrow. I'm not sure at what time, but I will be headed down to Mar-a-Lago. I will be there when Trump arrives. I will be sitting probably first or second row to hear his response to being arraigned on trumped up charges regarding Stormy Daniels. If anybody wants to know where I stand, you can call me what you want to call me. You can talk about me, whatever. There it is. Let it be known. That's my president, and I'm going to stick beside him. I don't listen to all the BS. I know the facts. I know what this man has proposed to the Black community. The platinum plan, $500 billion specifically for us. We hearing everybody crying about reparations. The only thing the Democrats are giving you right now is gender identity for your children, paying for them to be sexually transitioned, free abortion, and sending all of the money over to Ukraine. I live in America, so therefore, guess what? I'm not opposed to making America great. This is where I live. This is where my children live. This is where my children go to school. This is where my mother is buried. This is where my businesses are. This is where my organization is. So we all thrive when we make America great, if we want to think about the reality of it. Right now, they focusing on making Ukraine great. The US dollar has collapsed. Get your mind right, everybody. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Let's go.